Well, I was not expecting this. I think it's fair to say that 2025 has been a fascinating year for smartphones already, and it's only, March? Unbelievable. Now this is the Xiaomi 15, and it comes not that long after Apple announced a rather expensive and interestingly crippled new iPhone, and I think this demonstrates why Apple is massively out of touch when it comes to that price range. Spoiler, this is really good. By the way, guys, we're running a massive giveaway at the moment to celebrate hitting 200,000 subs on this channel. Thank you so much if you've added to that number. If you haven't, you know where the button is. But if you don't want to miss out on winning some incredibly exciting prizes, there's a link in the description. Get involved. Okay, let's start with a very quick spec rundown, René Ritchie, of the Xiaomi 15. So it has the Snapdragon 8 Elite chip with 12GB of RAM, a 5240 mAh battery which has 90-watt hypercharge and 50-watt wireless charging. The display is 6.36 inches, it's AMOLED, it's got 3200 nits of peak brightness, 120Hz variable refresh rate, obviously, and Dolby Vision support, and loads of certified eye care stuff, which is nice. It's also IP68 water resistant. It has Wi-Fi 7 and dual SIM support, and it's running the Xiaomi HyperOS 2 operating system. Pricing is here. And I think you'll agree that makes it very interesting immediately with those specs because it's only slightly more expensive than the iPhone 16e. Let's talk about the design of this phone because it's easily my favorite thing about. Is it my favorite thing? There's something else as well, which I'll come on to later, but the design straight out of the box, it feels so good in the hand. It's unbelievable, this phone. Now, for me, it's got slight iPhone 13 mini vibes, which if you know me, you know that I'm obsessed with that phone, always have been, always will be. Yeah, it just gave me that immediate feeling of one-handability, and this is a masterclass in what smartphones can be like if you don't want a massive smartphone. I've got an iPhone 16 Pro Max. I said earlier this year that the S25 Ultra from Samsung is the best smartphone I've ever used. That is completely true, but it's massive. And when you get a phone like the Xiaomi 15, it's just so perfectly sized. I think I prefer it to those big phones. I think it looks very smart in this black color, but it also comes in liquid silver, white, and a very fetching green. It just feels and looks very premium. I think this might be the best handling phone I've used in at least the last 2 years. The display. Guys, we have reached a point with Android phones, in fact we reached it probably a couple of years ago really, where every display on every Android phone pretty much is beautiful. It's lovely, it's fast, it's got 120Hz refresh rate, it's very bright, but it's just a great display. I don't know what more I can say about Android smartphone displays. They're just so good, and they are so far ahead of the iPhone 16e. Oh, and you also get a tiny pinhole camera there that you can just about see, no Monkey Island, and an under-display fingerprint reader and facial recognition. Okay, let's get straight into the camera system because on the back of it, it says Leica. And if you know who Leica is, you know that this means business. It has 3 cameras. It has a 14mm, a 23mm, and a 60mm. So the wide, the standard, and the telephoto respectively. Now there is an ultra version of the Xiaomi 15, which has slightly longer reach in terms of optical focal length, but actually 2.6x on this is pretty good, which I'll come on to in a moment. In terms of all of those cameras, they are all 50 megapixels. The front-facing camera, the selfie camera, is 32 megapixels, and this is an utterly lovely camera system. As always, this is a very subjective part of any smartphone review, so let me know what you think in the comments. In terms of that Leica influence, there's 2 modes to choose from, so you get Leica Vibrant and Leica Authentic. Personally, I prefer Vibrant, and most of the photos in these examples are taken with that Vibrant setting. So you can see what it looks like between the two. This is a photo of a coffee here that you can see. As you can see, Vibrant is just a little bit more vibrant. You know, the colors pop a little bit more, whereas the Authentic mode is just a little bit more contrasty, and for me, it doesn't quite work. I think these photos have a huge amount of character straight out of the camera. They're very contrasty, yes, and they are over sharpened in places, and I guess the colors can be a little bit oversaturated here and there, but I think that's why they're so immediately pleasing. But for me, just taking a photo and having an immediately pleasing result is all I want from a camera smartphone. I mean, a smartphone camera. When it comes to challenging shooting conditions like shooting straight into the sun in this example, I think the Xiaomi 15 does a good job. You can still see the detail in the darker areas, and actually the dynamic range overall is really impressive. I took this photo inside a walk stalking hut somewhere in the Cotswolds, and it was very dark in there, but you can see that it's done a pretty good job not being too blown out of the outside of the hut. As mentioned earlier, I would like a little bit more optical reach, but 2.6x does give you some very good results. Even 10x is pretty good. That's obviously a digital zoom. Beyond that, you're looking at AI trickery and the standard kind of stupid zooms which all of these phones do, which I just don't know who uses these super zooms personally. And for me, going up to 10x with the Xiaomi 15 is completely usable. The wide angle photos I think are pretty good as well. It's a little soft in the corners here and there, but that's if you're pixel peeping. If you just want to get a nice wide photo of some scenery or a street or something, it does a very good job. Portraits on the Xiaomi 15 are absolutely stunning. There's two examples I want to show you. One of this horse, which I don't think I've ever taken a better photo of a horse. Now, I've not taken many photos of horses, admittedly, but you must agree this looks lovely. Then we have my 2-year-old son, Harrison, who never stops moving, and somehow the Xiaomi 15 managed to capture him perfectly sharp against these elephants that are in... I live in Leamington, and there's a connection with elephants in Leamington. Doesn't matter. Look at these photos. For me, portraits these days are so important. Being a dad, I just want to get decent portraits of my son, and the Xiaomi 15 nailed it. That telephoto does double as a macro, and I got some fantastic macro shots with the Xiaomi 15, and it's also very nice to have to manually switch to that lens to get a macro shot rather than your phone deciding when you want to take a macro photo, which is what the iPhone does and which is the bane of every iPhone user's life. If you know what I'm talking about here, you know what I'm talking about. Low light stuff on the Xiaomi 15 is fantastic as well. It does struggle a little bit when you start zooming in, but to be honest, if you keep it at 1x, once it starts getting dark or you're taking photos in dimly lit rooms, it does a brilliant job. I keep saying it does a brilliant job. It's fantastic. This is a brilliant camera system. When it comes to video, it shoots up to 8K, which is absolutely nuts. I'm more interested in 4K, and it's a very good 4K shooter. I think the imagery here is really nice. It's very usable. I would use this for this channel if I needed to shoot some B-roll with my phone. I would use the Xiaomi 15. That's the litmus test for me. And, well, there's none of that weird Android jitteriness that you get with this stabilization either. It seems to be almost on a par with the iPhone when it comes to video. What is this thing? On to performance, and I have no interest in benchmarks, but I just thought, why not? Let's run a Geekbench test on this just for a laugh, and it scored 2,942 in single core and 8,902 in multi-core. I have no idea what any of that means, but it's up there with the best at the moment. It's up there nearly with the S25 Ultra, and it actually beats the iPhone 16 Pro Max in terms of multi-core. This is all down to that Snapdragon 8 Elite chip, which I've experienced in several phones now, and it is always brilliant. This is a buttery smooth phone. It's incredibly enjoyable to use. It doesn't crash, it doesn't slow down. It feels like an expensive flagship smartphone, albeit one that you can hold and use with one hand. Can you tell I like the Xiaomi 15? When it comes to battery life, it is fantastic, particularly in standby mode. Like every Android phone I've tested over the last 12 months, it's comically good when it's not doing anything. You'll put it down, leave it for a couple of days, and it's lost 2 or 3 percentage points. It's absolutely nuts. In terms of using it, at the moment it's got 87% battery remaining, and according to the operating system, that means there's 24 hours left in the tank. I think that's conservative, to be honest. Again, I don't do benchmarks with batteries, but my experience is that you can get well over 2 days with this thing. When it comes to HyperOS 2, which is Xiaomi's version of Android, I'm going to level with you. I just think it feels like every other version of Android that I've used, again, over the last 12 months. I know there's a lot of people who have their favorites. I completely get that. And there are differences, but most of those differences relate to things like the way icons look and the way that you navigate the system, and these days AI features and all that sort of stuff. But I struggle to compare the HyperOS 2 in this to, let's say, Honor's operating system or even One UI 7 from Samsung. They all feel incredibly similar, and the good news is incredibly brilliant. And yes, this has got all the AI features that you would expect, which I won't go into now because I just don't find them that interesting, but they are there. They're on the Xiaomi 15. Happy days. For me, it's the combination of that chip, the Snapdragon 8 Elite, and HyperOS 2, which make this an incredible performer. And that battery life, which is ridiculous. Okay, the Xiaomi 15, I love the size of it, I love the build quality, I love the spec, I love the camera, and I love the price. But it's really that form factor that is the winning formula here. This won't be for everyone. Some people like big phones. I completely get that. But if you're not that fussed about big phones, or if you're absolutely fed up with these trouser-filling monsters, I don't think... In fact, no, what I'm going to say about the Xiaomi 15 is that I think it has set a new standard for this sized phone. What a year for smartphones already. I can't wait to see what comes next. This will take some beating though. Let me know what you think in the comments as always, and if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up please. It makes a massive difference, and if you haven't hit subscribe yet, you know where that button is. Oh, and if you fancy some more smartphone content from me, hang around for a link at the end of this video.